At my ex-wife's 4th of July pool party, her mom looked me dead in the eyes, smiled, and said the words that cracked my whole world open. "So you're why she keeps saying no." I'm Caleb, the man Delaney once loved so much she made me promise, every single day, that I'd never break her heart. But 1 year ago she walked into our bedroom, found me there with her own sister, and stopped listening before I could say a single word. She left. Her mother slammed the door in my face. The divorce papers came before I could prove I was innocent. Because nothing happened, but there was no camera in the world that could make her believe me. So why, 12 months later, is my ex-wife rejecting every man who comes near her? Why is her mother, the same woman who once looked at me like a criminal, now smiling at me across a pool full of people? And what did Delaney see in that bedroom that had nothing to do with me, but everything to do with the 3 men who broke her long before I ever met her? The smell hit me before the sound did. Chlorine, charcoal smoke drifting off somebody's grill, sunscreen baking on skin. It was the smell of every 4th of July I'd ever loved. And for 1 second, standing at the edge of that backyard, I forgot I wasn't supposed to feel at home here anymore. Then I heard her laugh. Not loud, not fake. That real laugh, the one that used to fill up our kitchen at 7 in the morning while she burned the eggs on purpose because she liked the smell better than the taste. I hadn't heard that laugh in 380-something days. I know the number exactly, because I'd been counting since the morning she stopped looking at me like I was her husband and started looking at me like I was a stranger who'd broken into her life. My friend Marcus nudged my shoulder. "You good?" I wasn't, but I nodded anyway, because that's what men do when their whole chest feels like it's folding in on itself and nobody around them can tell. I almost turned around right there. I want you to know that. I almost walked back down that driveway, got in my car, and drove home to the quiet apartment that still smelled like takeout instead of her cooking. But something kept my feet still. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was some stupid hope I hadn't managed to kill yet, even after a year of trying. So I stayed. And that's when I saw her. Delaney was standing near the pool in a yellow sundress, holding a plate of watermelon she wasn't eating, laughing at something a friend said. Same wild curls she never let me touch without checking if my hands were clean first. Same habit of biting the inside of her cheek when she was nervous, which she was doing right now. Even mid-laugh, like her body remembered something her face was trying to hide. For 1 full second, her eyes lifted and found mine across that yard. And the whole party disappeared. I want to take you back, though, because you need to understand what those 380 days actually cost me before I tell you what happened at that pool. You need to understand who Delaney was to me before all of this, because it's the only way the rest of this is going to hurt the way it's supposed to. 3 years earlier, I was a broke, hungry, 26-year-old software engineer working 80-hour weeks trying to build something out of nothing, and Delaney Ford was the reason I didn't fall apart doing it. She used to leave notes in my lunch bag before I even knew that was something wives did. She used to wake up at 5 in the morning just so she could see my face before I left for work, even on the mornings she didn't have to be anywhere until noon. She loved me the way people love things they're terrified of losing. Tightly, constantly, like if she let go for even a second, I'd disappear. She used to ask me to promise her. Every single day. Sometimes twice. Promise me you'll never cheat on me. At first it felt sweet. Then it felt like a ritual. Then, if I'm honest, it started to feel heavy, like carrying a stone in my pocket that never got lighter no matter how many times I set it down and picked it back up. One night, and I regret this more than almost anything, I laughed and said, "God, I hope I haven't gotten myself into trouble marrying this woman." I meant it as a joke. She laughed too, but I saw something flicker behind her eyes that night, something old and tired that had nothing to do with me, though I didn't understand that yet. I didn't know, back then, about the 3 men who came before me. I didn't know about the one who left her for her college roommate. I didn't know about the one who lied about being engaged to another woman for 8 months while he was sleeping in Delaney's bed. I didn't know about the one who just vanished. No call, no explanation, no goodbye, like she'd been a rest stop on somebody else's road trip instead of a person worth an ending. I didn't know any of that. All I knew was that I loved her, and I thought loving her hard enough would be enough to hold both of us steady. I was wrong about that. Not because I stopped loving her, but because trust, it turns out, isn't built by one person loving hard enough. It's built by two people believing each other when it matters most. And on the night that mattered most, she didn't believe me. It was the night I signed the biggest contract of my career, the kind of deal that changes a family's entire future in one signature. I was so excited I couldn't think straight. I should have driven straight home. I should have walked through that door and told my wife first, before anybody else in the world. Instead, my colleagues pulled me into a celebration that turned into 6 drinks too many, and by the time I stumbled back to my own front steps, I could barely stand up straight, let alone unlock my own door. Delaney wasn't home. She was out with her friends that night, the way she deserved to be. But her sister Reagan was staying with us for the holiday weekend. And Reagan was the one who found me swaying on the porch, burning up with a fever nobody saw coming, mumbling words that didn't make sense. She got me inside. She got me up the stairs. She got a cold rag and sat beside me because I wouldn't stop shivering. And somewhere in trying to take care of her sister's sick, drunk husband, she fell asleep sitting upright, with my head resting against her lap. That's it. That's the whole truth of that night. A fever, a cold rag, 2 people who fell asleep by accident because one of them was sick and the other one cared too much to leave. But truth doesn't always look like truth when you walk into a room expecting the worst. Delaney came home just after sunrise, still glowing from her night out, ready to surprise me with the good coffee she'd bought special for the holiday. And instead, she found her husband in bed with her own sister. I woke up to the sound of the door hitting the wall. I still hear that sound sometimes, if I'm honest. In the quiet moments. That specific crack of wood against wood, and underneath it, the sound of something else breaking that never got fixed. Delaney. Reagan was already scrambling up, already talking too fast, the way people talk when the truth sounds insane even though it's real. He came home sick, I swear. Nothing happened. I was just trying to cool him down. Get out of my house. Her voice wasn't loud. That's what scared me the most. Delaney was loud when she was angry. She was loud when she loved. She had never, in 3 years, been that quiet. Reagan left in tears 20 minutes later, her bag still half-packed from a visit that was supposed to last through the holiday. She didn't slam the door on her way out. She just left it open, like she couldn't bring herself to close anything else that morning. I spent the rest of that day doing everything a man does when he knows he's innocent, and somehow already knows it won't be enough. I called. I texted apologies so long they turned into essays. When her phone finally went straight to voicemail for the 10th time, I drove to the one place I thought she might be, her mother's house. Her mother, Constance, opened that door with her arms already crossed before I said a single word. She doesn't want to see you. Mrs. Ford, please, if you just let me explain what actually happened. I don't need you to explain anything, Caleb. My daughter came home and found you in bed with her sister. There's nothing to explain. It's not what it... The door closed. Not slammed. Closed gently. The way you close a door on someone you've already decided isn't worth the argument anymore. I sat in that driveway for 40 minutes before I could make myself drive home. I checked for cameras. I want you to know that because it mattered so much to me at the time. I actually searched our house for a doorbell camera, a security system, anything, some piece of proof that could speak the truth louder than my own voice could. There was nothing. Of course there was nothing. It was a bedroom, not a bank vault. All I had was my word. And my word had stopped being enough the second she saw us on that bed. The divorce papers came 4 months later. I remember signing them in my car, in a parking lot, because I couldn't make myself walk into the house we'd built together and end it inside those walls. I told myself a lot of things after that I was done, that trust was a luxury I'd tried once and lost for good, that the next woman who looked at me twice would get a polite smile and nothing more, because I wasn't handing my whole heart to somebody who could throw it away over one misunderstanding. I even said, more than once, more bitterly than I'm proud of, that women were the problem. I didn't fully believe it, but it was easier to be angry than to keep being this sad. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't learn until much, much later, is that somewhere across town, in her mother's guest bedroom, Delaney Ford was lying awake every single night, missing me so badly it felt like being hungry in a language no food could answer. And she was turning away every single man who came near her, for a reason that had nothing to do with me at all. So back to that pool, back to the sundress, the watermelon, the laugh I hadn't heard in over a year. Marcus had talked me into coming to this party for one reason. Everybody's moved on, man. It's just a pool and some burgers. It won't be weird. He was wrong. It was the weirdest, most electric, most terrifying 30 seconds of my entire year, standing there watching my ex-wife's eyes lock onto mine across a yard full of people who had no idea they were about to watch the two of us collide. She looked away fast, back toward the pool, back toward anything that wasn't my face. But I was already crossing the yard, and before I could get a single word out of my mouth, her composure broke completely, right there, in front of everyone, like something that had been holding on far longer than it should have finally gave out. "I'm sorry," she said, voice cracking wide open. "I didn't trust you." I stood there frozen, heart slamming, because in 380 days, those were the 4 words I never once let myself hope I'd hear. And that's exactly where I need to stop, because what she said next, and what her mother said to me minutes later by that pool, changes everything you think you understand about this story. She stood there in front of everyone, tears cutting clean lines down a face that used to be the first thing I saw every morning, and I realized my hands were shaking. Not from anger, from something closer to disbelief, the kind that hits you when the thing you've been begging God for finally shows up, and you don't know if you're allowed to reach out and touch it. "I didn't trust you," she said again, quieter this time, like she needed to hear herself say it twice before she believed it was really coming out of her own mouth. Somewhere behind us, the party kept going. Kids cannonballing into the pool, someone's speaker playing an old country song too loud, the smell of burgers turning on the grill, smoke curling up into a sky that hadn't decided yet if it was going to rain on the fireworks tonight. But all of that felt far away, like background noise in a movie where the camera had zoomed in tight on just the two of us and forgotten the rest of the world existed. "Delaney." My voice came out rough. I hadn't said her name out loud in months, not to anyone. Saying it to her face felt like putting my hand on a stove I already knew was hot. "What are you talking about? What do you mean you didn't trust me?" She wiped her face with the back of her wrist, watermelon plate abandoned on a nearby table, and looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen since the earliest days of us, back when she used to look at me like I was the answer to a question she'd been asking her whole life. "Can we talk?" she said. "Not here. Please." I looked at Marcus. He was already backing away with his hands up, mouthing "go, go," like he'd been waiting his whole life to see this exact moment happen. I looked back at Delaney, and for the first time in over a year, I let myself follow her somewhere, instead of watching her walk away from me. And she led me past the pool, past the folding tables loaded with potato salad and flags stuck into little cupcakes, out to the quiet side yard, where a single string of lights hung between 2 trees, the kind of soft yellow glow that makes everything feel like it's happening in a memory, even while it's happening in real time. She turned to face me, arms wrapped around herself even though it wasn't cold. "I need to tell you something," she said. "And I need you to actually let me finish, because I didn't let you finish that night, and I've hated myself for it every single day since." My chest tightened. "Okay?" She took a breath so shaky I heard it catch in her throat. "Before I met you," she said, "there were 3 men. I stayed quiet. I didn't know where this was going, but something in her voice told me I needed to let it get there on its own. The first one left me for my college roommate, not even a stranger, someone I trusted, someone I used to tell everything to. I found out because I saw them together at a party, laughing like I'd never existed. The second one," her voice cracked again, and she pressed her lips together for a second before continuing. "The second one told me he loved me for 8 months while he was engaged to somebody else the entire time. I found the ring in his glove compartment by accident. 8 months, Caleb. 8 months of him looking me in the eye every single day. I felt something twist low in my stomach. An old protective anger toward men I'd never met and never would. And the third one, she said, just disappeared. No fight, no goodbye, no text. One day he was there, and the next day his number didn't work anymore. Like I was a rest stop on somebody's road trip instead of a person he'd spent 2 years with. She looked up at me then, eyes wet, and something in her face looked exhausted in a way I'd never let myself notice before. Back when I was too busy building a life to ask her why she needed those daily promises so badly. By the time I met you, she said, I didn't know how to love somebody without waiting for the moment it would all fall apart. That's why I made you promise. Every day. It wasn't about you, Caleb. It was never about you. It was about me trying to control something I'd already been burned by 3 separate times. I was asking you to carry the weight of 3 other men's mistakes, and you didn't even know you were doing it. I opened my mouth, but she shook her head, needing to keep going before she lost her nerve. So when I walked into that room, she said, and I saw you and Reagan on that bed, I didn't see you. I swear to God, Caleb, I didn't see my husband. I saw every single one of them, all 3 of them, wearing your face. 12 years of being left, being lied to, being made small, and it all came crashing down at once, and I couldn't separate what was real from what I was scared of. I ran on instinct instead of love, and I let that instinct destroy the one relationship where I actually had nothing to be afraid of. The lights above us flickered slightly in the evening breeze, and somewhere on the other side of the yard, a kid shrieked with laughter as he hit the water. It felt strange how ordinary the world kept being around us, while my entire understanding of the worst year of my life quietly rearranged itself. Why didn't you tell me any of this before? I asked. And I didn't mean it as an accusation. It came out soft, almost pleading. Delaney, if I'd known, I know. Her voice broke on the words. I know, and that's on me. I built you a home out of promises you didn't even know you were making, and then I punished you for something you never did, because it was easier to protect the wound I already had than to trust the thing that was actually good in front of me. I stood there for a long moment, feeling the truth of it settle into my chest, like something heavy, finally being set down after being carried too long. Anger was still there. I won't pretend it wasn't. A year of loneliness doesn't just evaporate because somebody finally explains themselves at a pool party. But underneath the anger was something else. Something that had been waiting a long time for permission to breathe again. I searched for cameras, I said quietly. That morning, I actually looked through the whole house for some kind of security footage, because I thought if I could just show you the truth, you'd believe me. Her face crumpled. I know. Marcus told me, everyone told me. I didn't listen to any of it, because listening would have meant admitting that the monster I was so sure I saw wasn't real, and if it wasn't real, then I had no one left to blame but myself. And now? I asked. What changed? She looked past me, toward the house, toward the pool, toward, I realized, following her gaze, her mother, standing near the drink table with a glass of lemonade in her hand, watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read yet. A year of silence changed, Delaney said. A year of turning down every man who so much as asked for my number changed. A year of missing the sound of your voice so badly I used to play old voicemails just to fall asleep. That changed something in me, Caleb. I finally had to ask myself the question I'd been avoiding since the day I signed those papers. What question? What if I was wrong? The words hung there between us, simple and enormous at the same time. Before I could answer, I heard footsteps on the grass behind me, and I turned to see Constance Ford walking toward us. Lemonade glass still in hand, sunglasses pushed up into her hair now instead of covering her eyes, like she wanted to make sure I could see exactly what expression she was wearing. I braced myself. The last time I'd seen this woman up close, she'd closed a door in my face without letting me finish a single sentence. I didn't know what to expect from her now, standing in her friend's backyard, on a holiday that used to belong to all of us. She stopped a few feet away, looked at her daughter's tear-streaked face, looked at me, and let out a long breath, like she was setting down something she'd been carrying a long time too. I owe you an apology, she said. A real one. Not the kind you give because you got caught. The kind you give because you finally understood you were wrong. I didn't say anything. I didn't trust my voice yet. I watched my daughter turn away every good man who came near her for an entire year, Constance said. I watched her flinch every time somebody said the word husband, like it still belonged to somebody it wasn't supposed to belong to anymore. And the whole time, I told myself I was protecting her. I told myself I was being a good mother by taking her side without question. She shook her head slowly. But a good mother doesn't just take sides, Caleb. A good mother finds out the truth before she slams a door on somebody's chance to explain himself. She looked at Delaney then, and something passed between mother and daughter that I couldn't fully understand. Some old current of guilt and love, tangled together the way it only gets tangled between people who've hurt each other while trying to protect each other. I let my own fear talk for me that day, Constance said, turning back to me. I've been divorced twice. I know what it feels like to be lied to by a man I trusted completely. When Delaney showed up on my doorstep in tears, I didn't see you, Caleb. I saw every man who ever broke my heart, standing behind my daughter's pain. I judged you based on wounds that had nothing to do with you, same as she did. I'm sorry. I should have let you speak. I should have asked more questions before I decided what kind of man you were. The apology hit somewhere deep in my chest, somewhere I hadn't realized was still raw until it wasn't anymore. Thank you, I said, and I meant it more than those two words could hold. Constance's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile yet, but was close. She looked at her daughter, who was still standing there with her arms wrapped around herself, watching this whole exchange like she didn't quite believe it was real. So, Constance said, turning back to me, and something lighter finally broke through in her voice. You're why she keeps saying no. It wasn't an accusation this time. It was almost fond, almost proud, the way you'd say something about a fact you'd finally stopped fighting. I felt something crack open in my chest, not from pain this time, but from the sheer relief of being seen, fully, after a year of feeling invisible to the two women who used to be the center of my whole world. I need to ask you something, I said, turning back to Delaney, my heart pounding so hard I was sure she could hear it. And I need you to actually answer me honestly, because I can't do another year of silence. I can't survive another year of almost. She nodded, eyes wide, waiting. Do you still love me? I asked. Not the version of me you were scared of. Not the ghosts of those other men. Me, Caleb. The man who used to burn eggs with you every Saturday morning and never once complained because I liked watching you laugh at your own bad cooking. Her breath caught, and for a second I thought she might not be able to answer at all. Then she stepped forward, closing the distance between us, close enough that I could smell the familiar mix of sunscreen and her perfume that used to mean home to me. I never stopped, she whispered. Not for one single day. I just didn't know how to come back from what I'd done. I didn't know if you'd even want me to. I reached up, slowly, giving her every chance to step back if she needed to, and brushed a tear off her cheek with my thumb, the way I used to when we were still just a young, broke couple figuring out how to survive on love and bad takeout. I want you to, I said. I never stopped either. Behind us, I heard Constance clear her throat, and when I glanced over, she was already walking away, giving us the privacy the moment deserved, though I caught the small, satisfied smile on her face before she turned. But there was still one piece missing. One name neither of us had said yet, hanging in the space between everything that had just been healed. Reagan, I said quietly. Delaney's face fell, the guilt rushing back in like a wave that hadn't finished crashing yet. She hasn't spoken to me in almost a year, Delaney said. Not really. A card on my birthday, a text on Christmas, nothing more than that. I destroyed the one thing I never should have touched, my own sister's trust in me, because I couldn't separate my fear from the truth in front of me. Then that's the next thing we fix, I said. Together, if you'll let me. She looked up at me, something like hope flickering behind the exhaustion in her eyes. The first real hope I'd seen on her face since the morning everything fell apart. You'd do that? She asked. After everything? Delaney, I said. I never stopped being your husband in my heart. I just stopped having the paperwork to prove it. She laughed. A real laugh. Wet and messy and full of relief. And for the first time in 380 days, I heard the sound that used to fill up our kitchen every single morning, and it felt like coming home. But healing a marriage is one thing. Healing two sisters who haven't spoken in a year, after a betrayal that was never actually a betrayal at all, that was going to take more than an apology at a pool party. And neither of us knew yet just how hard Reagan was going to make us work for it. Reagan Ford hadn't picked up her sister's calls in 11 months. She'd answered exactly twice. Once to say, "I got your birthday text," in a voice flatter than a closed door, and once, months later, to say, "I'm fine, Mom. Tell Delaney I'm fine," through their mother's phone, because she couldn't stand to hear her sister's voice directly yet. That's the part people don't talk about when they tell stories about betrayal and forgiveness. Everyone focuses on the couple. Nobody talks about the innocent person standing in the wreckage of somebody else's fear, wondering what she did wrong when the honest answer was nothing. Reagan hadn't lied. She hadn't touched anything that wasn't hers. She'd simply tried to take care of a sick man because she loved her sister enough to want to protect the life Delaney had built. And she'd been thrown out of that life anyway, treated like a stranger, like a threat, like something dangerous, instead of someone who'd only ever been kind. So when Delaney called her the week after that 4th of July pool party, Reagan almost didn't answer. She told me this herself, months later, sitting across from me at a kitchen table that used to feel like a war zone and had somehow, slowly, turned back into just a table. She said she stared at Delaney's name lighting up her phone screen for 6 full rings before she picked it up. And even then, all she said was, "Why now?" Delaney didn't make excuses. That's the part that mattered most. She didn't say "I was scared," like it was a magic phrase that erased 11 months of silence. She said, "Because I was wrong, and I've been too much of a coward to say it to your face until now. And I don't want to be a coward anymore." There's something about hearing somebody actually name what they did, not soften it, not explain it away, just stand in the truth of it, that starts to melt something even after 11 months of ice. Reagan agreed to meet her for lunch. Just the two of them. No mother running interference. No me standing nearby trying to smooth things over. I wasn't there for that lunch. And I'm glad I wasn't, because some conversations only heal when the people who need to have them are alone in the room together. But Delaney told me about it afterward, and I'm going to tell you the way she told me, because it deserves to be told right. She said Reagan sat across from her, arms crossed, jaw tight, looking like she was bracing for another excuse. And Delaney said the thing she'd rehearsed 100 times in the mirror, and still almost couldn't get out. "I know it wasn't you," she said. "I knew it that morning too, somewhere underneath the panic. But I was so scared of becoming a woman who gets left again, that I turned the two people who loved me the most into the villains from my worst nightmares. I looked at you, my own sister, the person who used to braid my hair before school dances, and for one terrible morning, I saw a stranger capable of the worst thing I could imagine. That wasn't fair to you. It wasn't fair to Caleb. And it wasn't fair to who we actually are to each other." Reagan cried first. Delaney told me that surprised her, because she'd expected to be the one falling apart. But Reagan had been carrying something heavy too. Not guilt, because she had nothing to feel guilty about, but grief. The grief of losing a sister over something she never did, of being punished for kindness, of wondering for 11 months if the people who were supposed to know her best had ever really known her at all. "I just needed you to believe me," Reagan said. "That's all I ever needed." "I know," Delaney said. "I believe you now. I should have believed you then." They sat in that restaurant for 3 hours. They ordered dessert they didn't finish. And by the end of it, two sisters who'd spent nearly a year as strangers were sitting shoulder to shoulder in the same booth, the way they used to sit on the same side of every table since they were children. Because some kinds of closeness don't disappear, they just go quiet for a while, waiting for somebody brave enough to speak first. By the following spring, Reagan was back at Sunday dinners, back in the group chat, back, eventually, standing in Delaney's kitchen on a random Tuesday, laughing about something so small neither of them can remember it now, in a home that no longer felt like the scene of the worst morning of all our lives, but just felt like home again. Delaney and I took longer to rebuild than the sisters did, if I'm honest. Trust doesn't snap back into place just because the truth finally comes out. We went to counseling, real counseling, the uncomfortable kind where a stranger makes you sit in silence until you say the thing you've been avoiding. We talked, really talked, about the three men who came before me, about the daily promises that were never really about me, about the fever and the fear and the year of silence that followed. We learned how to argue without either of us disappearing into old wounds that belonged to somebody else. And slowly, the way morning comes back after the longest night, we found our way back to each other. We remarried the following summer, quietly, in her mother's backyard, 1 week before the 4th of July. Same yard where I used to bring her flowers before we were ever married the first time. Same trees, older now, with the same string of yellow lights hung between them. Constance gave a toast that night, and near the end of it, with a glass raised and her eyes wet, she said the line one more time, "So you're why she keeps saying no." And this time the whole yard laughed, because it wasn't an accusation anymore. It was a love story. 2 years after that, on a warm July evening with the sound of somebody's fireworks going off 2 houses down, Delaney went into labor 3 weeks early. By the time the sky over the city had gone quiet again, we were holding 2 very small, very loud twin daughters. One came out with my stubborn chin. The other came out already gripping Delaney's finger, like she had no intention of ever letting go of anything she loved. We named the older one Reagan. I think about that morning often. The fever, the misunderstanding, the year we lost that we can never fully get back. I used to be angry about that lost year. Now I mostly feel grateful, because it taught both of us something we might never have learned any other way. That love isn't just about how loudly you promise never to leave. It's about what you do in the silence, in the doubt, in the moment you're most afraid, whether you run toward the truth or run away from it, because the truth is scarier than the fear you already know. So before you go, I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually sit with it before you answer, not just scroll past it. If someone you loved was the one standing in that room, accused, silent, unable to prove the truth with anything but their own word, would you have believed them? Or would the ghosts of your own past have answered for you, the way they almost destroyed everything for Delaney and me? Sit with that one. It's not as easy a question as it sounds. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the wounds you're still carrying from people who came before the ones you love now, do me a favor, hit subscribe, and turn on that notification bell, because there are more stories like this one coming. Stories about love, forgiveness, and the moments that almost break us before they make us whole. I'll see you in the next one.